lives with a smile và cách họ biến nó thành sự thật bằng kích hoạt bộ tứ văn hóa, kỹ năng, hệ thống và động lực của đội ngũ. Chủ đề của bài chia sẻ của ông Joe đó chính là bí quyết tạo nên trải nghiệm wow trong một ngành F&B bảo hòa, câu chuyện của Visa for Bees. Và xin mời quý vị chúng ta sẽ cùng đeo headphone vào.
Hi. All right, hi everybody. Oh, I see all the headphones going on. Okay, cool. Sorry to ruin the Vietnamese parade and go with English, but thank you for your patience with that. So if I speak too fast, feel free to just wave at me and be like, Joe, slow down, because apparently I do that a lot. So anyway, yeah, hi everybody. Awesome to be here. Very excited about this. I've always wondered sometimes, like, what's on these screens up on the stage, you know? There's a timer for me, I like that, and then my slides, so I don't have to turn around. So anyway, I want to do something real quick before we get started. Everybody stand up. Everybody stand up. All right, we've all been just sitting for like an hour, so I just want you guys to stand up, shake it out a little bit, shake it out. Like move around a little, there we go, there we go. Come on, shake it, shake it. Move it, move it. Woo! Okay, okay, okay. Now we got some blood flowing. All right, guys, okay. You can sit back down. So let's kick this off. All right, so yeah, how to truly wow in a saturated market. So that's my topic. And when Zung sent me the subject, it immediately clicked for me because it's something that I've been thinking about for a very, very long time. So just a really quick about who this guy is. I am, yes, as he said, the former Culture and Operations Director, Culture and Operations Excellence Director for Pizza 4Ps. I had the awesome chance to work with them for 2 years and set up their learning and development team as well as their culture team. And the fun problem that they had was they were trying to expand very rapidly. And so they were having a little bit of difficulty with that in sort of keeping who they were as Pizza 4Ps as they went through that constant expansion. And so I got to play with them and help with that process. Push the button. There it goes. And I want to do a special shout out to Zung and Vapiria before we get really into this. Thank you so much for having us all here. It's really great to be here and be talking about this very, very important subject. All right, so where my mind went with this to think about how do you differentiate in a saturated market. And I think I have a lot of background in F&B, but many other industries as well. And it's sort of there's been this trend for a long time to where everything is moving towards, in this very, very hyper-connected space, everything's moving towards reviews. Now, I'm from the US, and over there, this has been the case for a very, very long time, where anything that you do, you're gonna look at reviews. You're gonna go on Google, you're gonna go on Yelp, whatever you wanna do, you're gonna look at what's going on and is this a place that I wanna go to? And for a while, wow was this kind of like big differentiator because then that gave you the really good reviews. But after a while, everyone started to do it. And so it became where wow is like the standard, right? And so if wow is the standard, then how do you stand out? If everybody's doing it, how do you stand out in that? And so there was this sort of trend over time where that's what it was. It just became this survival strategy. If we want to exist, we have to do this. And when I came here 8 years ago in Vietnam, this was like a big bummer for me, I guess you could say, but I'm going on Google and I'm trying to look up and like, okay, where do I go? These wow moments, like we have to do something, you know? I also think about, we're in this very Instagram happy world, right? So everybody's sharing, and how do we get people to share about us, to talk about us positively, right? And so this is happening more and more and more, and it's raising the standards, right? And what used to be these innovators, these people who were like, man, we're gonna stand out, we're gonna create these wow moments, others copied it, and now that's just the expectation. So anywhere you go that it has any standard, the standard is wow. Oh, wow, okay. So then what do you do? So I love to quote this guy, Tony Hsieh. the late Tony Hsieh, unfortunately. He started a little company called Zappos that in, I think it was 2008, he sold it to Amazon for over $2 billion. So great business success, no doubt about that. But how did he get that success, right? I mean, first of all, if you don't know what Zappos does, they are an online shoe sales company. Shoes. You know, the thing, I always thought, you gotta go try those on. You can't buy shoes online, that's nuts. And back then, everybody thought that as well. But he pushed forward, he did it. And I love this because you can copy what we do, but you can't copy who we are. And that was really this like sort of big key to what made Pizza 4Ps and many other companies that I've worked with very, very successful. And so let's talk a little bit about Pizza 4Ps specifically. So I do love that I heard this, the VW. So Zung, that was really cool because it's really so true, right? You gotta have that vision and you gotta work hard, you know? Like you have the vision and that's really cool, but then you gotta put in the time and effort. And so Pizza 4Ps, they have this. They have make the world smile for peace, all right? And they mean it. Oh my gosh, they mean it. They have their values. So omotenashi is the Japanese spirit of hospitality, compassion, you guys know what that one is, authenticity, and kaizen. And kaizen is Japanese for continuous improvement, always doing better. And then even farther beyond this vision, Masuko put forward this, the North Star. Every guest leaves with a smile. So he basically just said to the entire team, to everybody, very simply put, this is what we do. And we measure it with 5-star reviews. So these two kids, Masuko and Sani, the founders of Pizza 4Ps, I gotta tell a little bit of their stories because it's amazing where they started from and when I joined their journey, where they were, because it all started with Masuko and having a tragic moment in his life. His best friend committed suicide. And in order for him to deal with that, he started these pizza parties in his backyard. And that brought happiness to all of the people around him. It brought him happiness and inner peace, and it progressed from there. And he started to share this, and he eventually brought Pizza 4Ps to Le Tanton in 2013 in Ho Chi Minh City. And all he wanted to do was give other people happiness and inner peace. And so the amazing thing, and the story of Pizza 4Ps starts from this role model leadership. It was Masuko and Sani just being who they are, right? And all the people around them saw that and said, wow, this is really cool. I want to be part of what you guys are doing, and I'm going to do the same, right? And so they had one little restaurant, and they were being themselves, and Masuko was doing what he was passionate about, right? And just bringing peace and happiness and smiles to all the people that came to that Pizza 4Ps. And then they expanded, and they expanded, and they expanded. So when I joined, they already had, I think it was about 25 restaurants. And they had expanded into Cambodia. So they're in 2 countries, and they're in several cities across Vietnam. But they were running into an issue. And the problem was that when you're around these two, it's electric. You're gonna love it. They're amazing people. But when you're not around them, when they're in Ho Chi Minh City and you're up in Hanoi, or you're out in Da Nang, or you're wherever you're at, you know a little bit about what's going on in the company. You know a little bit about that culture that's there, but you're farther away from them, and the culture gets diluted. And so I quickly realized that my role working with Pizza 4Ps was not to spread the culture, because it was already around, but it was to spread it faster and more. Because they did a great job just being who they are and living that and creating that amazing experience. And because they did that, Pizza 4Ps was able to expand without a lot of stuff like standard operating procedures or training. They just had their culture. And so that's what I came in, and I brought this like SOP and the rigid training, and not rigid, but but that's what I brought, is a system for all of this. But there's a really big key to how that all goes into play, because you got to keep alive what the company is. And so that's what I want to get into with this. And I want to talk about, so there's two real ways to like run a company, right? And one of them is very rules-based. So if you think about, okay, every time something goes wrong, what do? You make a new rule. Oh, something went wrong, we make a new rule. Oh, somebody complained about something, we got a bad review, we make a new rule, right? So you get all these rules and you tell everybody what to do, okay? And the other way is values-based. So let's look at what happens when you go rules-based, okay? Something goes wrong, make a new rule. Something goes wrong, make a new rule. The company's always growing, things are always getting more complex, but when you just go by rules, when that's all there is, and every time somebody does something wrong, you say, oh, you did that wrong, you didn't follow the rule. Or maybe there wasn't a rule, so now we make a new rule, okay? Your freedom and autonomy goes down. And people don't like to work in that. It's not fun. So then your percentage of high performers also goes down. And that's one way to run a company. And I'm not here to say that it's wrong, but that's one way. The way that Masuko and Sani chose to run their company was more like this. The values were the most important thing. And there were still rules. I'm not going to lie to you. There's still got to be rules, right? We don't get rid of them altogether. But when you lead by values, it makes a tremendous difference. And so that's what they did naturally at first. For 11 years before I started with the company, they were doing that completely naturally and spreading it across the country. And when you do that, people are free to act within the values. Because it's not, oh, you didn't do this rule, you didn't do this specific thing. It's, hey, let's talk about authenticity. Let's talk about compassion when something goes wrong. And so then freedom and autonomy goes up, and high performance goes up. So let's get into a little example of what that looks like. Because culture is a major, major piece of the puzzle, but it's not everything. So I want to share a little bit of a story, I guess. This is my mother over here. What's today? She turns 80 tomorrow. Yeah. I'm very bummed I'm not there to celebrate with her, but they actually already celebrated on Saturday, so yesterday, and I saw all the pictures, and it looked like a fantastic event, so I'll call her tomorrow and wish her a happy birthday on the actual day. But when I was growing up, my mother used to annoy the hell out of me, like really bug me with this, because she would be like, Joe, I need you to do this, and then she would proceed to explain why. And I'd be like, Mom, I don't care why. I'm just going to do it. I don't care. Right? But she would tell me, she would sit there, oh. And my mom did this because her dad, my grandfather, never explained why to anything. He just said, you do this. You do this. Right? So Grandpa was rules-based. But Mom was values-based. And even though it used to annoy the hell out of me, now that I'm grown up, I realize what she was doing. She was explaining her values. So I understood why I was doing what I was doing. And it gave me so much more that I was able to operate from that idea of, I know why I want to do this. And because I know why, I'm not just following one simple little rule. I can do so much more. I can do anything within this values system, right? And so I am so grateful now that Mom gave me that, because the why matters so much. And that's huge. So why is it so big, right? So this is our little skill matrix, and this is what we kind of illustrates what Pizza 4Ps had and what we work towards, okay? So Pizza 4Ps started out, when I first came, they were up the behavior side, right? So enthusiastic but unscalable. So when you have neither skill nor behavior, behavior is the culture, right? That's the values. So when you have neither one of those, you're in the chaos zone. I don't know how to do it. I don't care why we do it. But Pizza 4Ps, they went up this other side where they got people who were very enthusiastic, right? And it creates this predictable outcome. And so I stepped in where across the country they had this culture built, and if you went to a Pizza 4Ps anywhere across Vietnam, you were getting a very consistent and great experience, right? Who's been to Pizza 4Ps? Yeah, just about every hand's gonna go up, right? And who had a good time at Pizza 4Ps? Yeah. And all the hands stay up, right. So they built that just through their culture. But the problem was, when you do that, it's unscalable. Because you're getting that great enthusiastic thing, but everybody's doing it their own way. Okay? So it's a great thing that mom taught me those values, and I'm not going to do it the same way that she did it. And in my personal life, that's okay. I think that works. But in a business, that's hard to scale. That's hard to teach, right? And so then the other side of it, if you go with just skills, and a lot of companies do this because they don't really understand values, they don't really understand why that matters. And so they just go skills, like, all right, we're going to teach you how to do everything that you need to do, and we're going to give you this specific set of skills. And so then everybody's doing exactly what they were told, and they know how to do it and all that, and it creates this sort of mechanical sort of experience, right? And then you literally get, and this is a real story, and I'm going to illustrate this in a minute. I did what you said, and if the customer's upset, that's your fault. Right? I followed the rules. I did what you said. Customer's upset, not my problem. Wow, okay. So the sweet spot is when you combine both, right? And that was really my role at Pizza 4Ps, is how do we combine these two? How do we keep strong what Pizza 4Ps was built on and what they had already, and then add in a system of education to live that? So that's the second piece of the puzzle here. The skills need to be there, but they've got to be led by the values. Because if you don't have that value piece, then you get that mechanical thing. You get the people just going, okay, yeah, I did what you said. Customer's not happy. Not my issue. So to take a look at a real life example of this actually happening, right? So this is a situation that came up in Pizza 4Ps. And it was the situation is the guest waits a very long time for their main dish, right? And the rule is, when a guest is upset, right, you offer them a dessert. Okay, great. So the dessert comes out, it was a chocolate cake. Well, guess what? The guest is allergic to chocolate. That doesn't work, okay? So now, I followed the rule, the guest is upset. That's not my fault, that's your fault, right? Not good. All right. And literally, like, I remember this. I remember hearing this when it came to my desk. And like, I heard this story and I'm just like, really? Oh man, okay, yeah. So how do we address that, right? So rules versus values in action. Now, same situation. The guest waits for 25 minutes for a main dish, all right? But now we've got this North Star, right? So Masuko put forth that idea. Every guest leaves with a smile, okay? And we've got values, right? So in this case, 3 of the values really come into play. So we got compassion, right? We got omotenashi, the spirit of hospitality, and we have authenticity. Okay? So the dish is late, the team member is going to be honest about it, and they're going to have empathy, they're going to have compassion, omotenashi. So here's what happened. The server says, "I'm so sorry for the delay. I noticed you checking your watch several times. May I ask if there's something specific that's troubling you?" So, right, they said something. They didn't just try some default rule, right? Because they know this guest needs to leave with a smile. This is a bad situation, but they need to leave with a smile, and I know that. So I'm going to have compassion, and I'm going to have omotenashi, and I'm going to create this experience for them. And so the guest says, yeah, we're squeezing lunch in between meetings, and we're worried about time. Okay? So what happens then is the server says, all right, hey, I'm going to make this one to go. And in the box, he writes a personalized note. Thank you for your patience today. We know time is valuable, and we're sorry we didn't get it quite right. The next meal is on us, and we'll make sure it is fast and fantastic. And they put some vouchers in there for their next visit. So, same situation, but instead of following just a rule, they followed the idea that every guest leaves with a smile. I know how to behave with the values, and I created this. And so the guest leaves, bummer that their meal was late, but they're happy, and they're coming back. And they're probably going to tell their friends. And that's the power of this value-based training. So when we build all of the training, we don't do it just by saying, here's the specific skills that you need, but everything gets the values built into it. And you can't script that. You can't make a rule for every single situation. But what you can do is you can teach people how to behave. And you can teach them that this is what they need to do in order to create these experiences. And so then you can turn these potentially bad reviews into oftentimes great ones. And I can tell you from quite a bit of experience, when things go wrong is often the greatest time for you to be able to shine. So if you can teach your team that, it's so incredibly powerful. All right, so this is the third piece in the puzzle, because there's 4 pieces, so obviously I have to talk about them all, right? But I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one. In everything that we do, we want to make sure that it's sustainable, and that's where the system comes into play. One of the first books I ever read when I was starting my first company, actually it wasn't my first company, but it was my first company that actually made money. So when I was starting my first company that actually made money, rephrase that, I read the E-Myth. And in the E-Myth, he really talked about, the system, and the system runs the business and the people run the system. But why this matters is because what you can do with this is you can take ordinary people and allow them to do extraordinary things. And that was such an amazing thing, because it was the big trend for a long time to always hire the absolute best talent. It didn't matter if they really cared about what you were up to as a business. What mattered is that they had the best skills for exactly what you're doing. And then you got a bunch of people who were not on the same path, all trying to do one thing. And it's become more of a trend nowadays to really focus on finding the people who also, in this case, want to make the world smile for peace. They want to be on the same mission, they want to be following the same guidelines as you, and their skills might not be as high, but that's where the system comes into play. And so you build this structure and you build this system so that those people who are excited about what you're doing and will take advantage of the system that you've built can then shine and become way better. And again, another one from experience, often they grab onto it because they want to be there. And so they push for creating an amazing thing right alongside you. All right, so there's a missing piece of the puzzle still, right? So there's still one chunk missing. So what's missing? All right? So to illustrate this one, because I think it's actually the most important piece of the entire puzzle, I want to ask you guys this question. Why do you do anything that you do? What are your goals in life? So I want to see maybe if I can get, it's a pretty big crowd. Let's see if maybe we can get a volunteer. Does anybody have like a goal that they'd like to share? Raise your hand. And it could be simple. It could be like, I want to lose some weight at the gym. Or it could be, I want to buy a house. Anybody have something they would be willing to share with the group? Ah, over here, okay. Okay, cool.
So I'm specialized in sales consulting.
Okay.
So that's why I want to train every company to be more proficient in their working and
Okay.
in their making more profit.
Making more profit.
Yeah.
So you're a consultant and you
Yeah.
want to teach companies how to make more profit.
Yes, but
Okay.
I want them to realize their own way, not by my way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's your name?
My name is Tung.
Tum. All right. Tum.
T-U-N-G.
Nice to meet you, Tum.
Yeah. Yeah.
T-U-N-G.
Nice to meet you. Yeah.
No. Stay standing. Stay standing. So you probably didn't realize you volunteered for more than you expected.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to ask you some questions.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So just to recap, you have a consulting company. You want to teach companies how to make more profit, but you want them to be, it sounds like self-sustaining. You want them to kind of get that on their own?
Not on the one, but realize their own way. Because
realize their own way.
Yeah, because
Okay.
normally the boss they make profit.
Yeah.
But when I came in, I asked them why they can make profit.
Okay.
They could not realize it,
Okay.
and I had to rearrange it. And
Yeah.
then, until I and them come to a conclusion, and that is the mutual solution.
Yeah. So why do you want to do this for these companies?
I don't know, but because I was successful with some company on my own.
Uh-huh.
And then I realized that people out there, they need it.
Okay, so you were successful on your own. You did this. You found your way
Yes.
to be more profitable.
Yeah.
And so then you saw that helped people.
Yes.
Okay. And what did that do for these people? Like why did helping them matter?
How to say? Because I'm a salesman, so I want to make money for my own. On
Okay.
my own, yeah. And then I want to when I want to make more money, I think that I want to make more profit for them, my customer first, and then they will give me more than I ask.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Okay, so
Yes.
you're making a great customer experience for them.
Yes.
Obviously, you're making them more money. You're making yourself more money.
Yes.
So what does this money do for you in your life?
Because my family used to be go bankrupt one time.
Ooh.
Yeah, so that's why I don't want to be in that not very safe situation again.
Got it.
And then I want to provide the best environment for my family,
Yeah.
for my own family, for my wife, for my children.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. How many times did I just ask you why? That was what, 3, 4? Okay. And we got to the reason you're doing what you're doing is because
Yeah.
you want to create security for your family.
Yeah.
And it stems from this bad experience you had in the past where
Yes.
you went bankrupt.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. Everybody give him a hand. All right. So maybe you've seen this in the past as the 5 whys exercise. It's often used for root cause analysis. But in this example, I'm applying it into motivation. Like, why do people do things that they do? And you can have all kinds of things, like what Tum just shared. You know, where you can have I want to grow a company, I want to get a great job, I want to find a boyfriend, I want to exercise. And what happens is if you ask why enough times, and typically 5 is about the magic number, but it can be less, like we got there quicker with Tum, but it drills down into something that is true to your heart, right? And you really find the true why, and the true why is he's creating this amazing experience for his family, based on this bad experience that he had before, but it's family. And when it gets down to it, he's creating something for his family, right? And so in this example of, I guess you could say it's somewhat similar, but I want to make more money, so I have more time and flexibility, because I want to be present for my family, give my kids what I didn't have growing up. And you see in this example, in Tum's example, what he's doing in growing his business, it transforms from something that he just kind of wants to do, or it's a side hustle, or whatever it is, into something that's a value-driven mission, right? So now this means, like, when he's out working with customers, he's not looking at that customer thinking, like, I can make you more money, and I can make money because of that. He's thinking, I can provide this amazing thing for my family. And that drives you, right? And so that's the full puzzle. It's motivation. Because without it, doesn't matter how good your system is, it doesn't matter what skills you teach, it doesn't even matter what culture, what words you put up on the wall. If people don't care and don't want to do it, they're not gonna. So I want to talk a little bit about motivation and what drives it, okay? So, at the minimum, when it comes to work, people show up for their paycheck, right? I need money. You know? Okay, there are some examples where that's not true, like mom told me I have to get a job, because for whatever, but even though my parents would still give me money. But for the most part, people show up for their paycheck, right? And when they're only showing up for their paycheck, this is why this little part is so small, when they're only showing up for their paycheck, they are putting in the absolute minimum effort to not get fired, right? So, okay, well, that's fine. You're here. You're not fired. Yay. The second level is company pride, job pride. I like what I do. I enjoy the work. This is something I went to school for it, maybe, right? And so I'm showing up because this is a job that I actually think is really cool, you know? And so you put in a little bit more effort because you're happy about what you do, right? But that doesn't actually provide that much motivation, and oftentimes it fades. You know, you get into a job and you think, wow, this is really great, I work for an amazing company, and then after a while it's kind of like, okay, well, I saw what's going on inside the company, it's not as amazing, you know, whatever it is, but sometimes that stuff fades. A really big motivator is who you work with, and so the people around you, creating a great place to work, being a boss that people say like, oh, you know, one of my heroes, one of the people I admire is my boss. If you can be that boss, people love to show up for you. If you can have a team that you really enjoy being around, people love to show up for that. And so that's a big motivator. So working on that and creating that environment within your workplace, huge one. The next one up is personal growth. And I used to think for a long time, I thought this was it, man. This was the ultimate. Like, you can't get higher than this when it comes to motivation. That personal growth, that's what drives you, right? Because you think like, oh man, I want to do this because I am passionate about whatever, or I am, and it's the thing that's very internal, right? And it's something that it's like, this drives me, and this is something that I love. And that's really great. And so it could be something where maybe in your company you've got a leadership development program, or you are that great boss, and so actually that plays into personal growth because they show up because you're a bit of a coach for your team, where you're helping them grow, and they know that their future career is on the right track because they're there, okay? And that can be personal growth. But what I learned here in Vietnam is there's a step beyond that. And this was an amazing thing that we got to do in Pizza 4Ps, is we got to introduce people to the concept of higher purpose. And the big difference between personal growth and being in it for something that I'm passionate about is being in it for something beyond yourself, right? So this is where, like Tom's example was fantastic because he's in it for his family. It's not just about Tom. It's not just about him making more money and having whatever he can do with that money, but it's about his family, and that's a higher purpose, right? I want to create this experience for my family. And when people can connect to that, that's the ultimate. And in business, how that plays out, and the fun thing that I got to do at Pizza 4Ps was I got to actually take people through the exercise of discovering their personal values and discovering their higher purpose. And for me, my higher purpose is to inspire people into purpose-driven action. It's literally what I'm doing right now. So, thank you, Zoom, for having me here today.
Thank you so much. And,
Oh, I'm not done.
Yeah, absolutely, I was inspired. I'm not done. Oh, really?
No, there's a thank you slide, you'll know. Yeah. I'm getting close, though. I know, I got 14 minutes left. So, but thank you. Yeah, I like that. That was like big enough to close on. All right, yeah, okay. No, hopefully we'll have another one of those moments. But yeah, so the ultimate being the higher purpose. And when you can connect people to that, man, they're showing up on fire. They want to do so much more. And so let's talk about like what that drives. That drives engagement, or also known as discretionary effort. And what that does is it causes people to go above and beyond. So you can create that system, you can have all the skills, you can have the values. But again, if people don't care, then they just show up, they do the minimum, they get their paycheck, and they go home. But when they care, when they're connected to these motivators, then they go above and beyond. They put in that discretionary effort, right? And your leadership has such a big role in that. So all these puzzle pieces put together, let's take it back a little bit and make this real, okay? So let's talk about what we actually did in Pizza 4Ps, like what my job was to make all of this real. So one of the very first things we started out with, and I went to the operations director and I said, all right, give me all of your SOP. I gotta make training, give me everything you got. And so he said, oh yeah, SOP, we need to do that. And I'm like, really? That really surprised me because they're doing so well. But again, they built it on the culture. Everyone knew what they were supposed to deliver and how they were supposed to behave, so they didn't have a lot of this. And so we pulled together all of that, and we started creating these trainings. And when we built the trainings, we made sure that the why was in there. Thank you, Mom. Right? And we made sure that they understood why they were doing the things we were asking them to do. And so when it came to things like, if you're late and dishonest, right? Oh, sorry, my bike broke down, whatever, I was actually sleeping in because I was out drinking last night. Okay, and your boss happened to see you last night, and so he knows you're lying. Now we're gonna have a chat about authenticity. It's not you did this thing wrong and here's the disciplinary action and that's it. There might be a disciplinary action, depending on what it is, but we're gonna have a conversation about authenticity because you're not behaving within the way that we're teaching you to behave. Customers waiting too long, omotenashi and compassion. You saw that in the example from before. Mistake on an order, accountability and Kaizen. So when the staff understands that the values aren't this just abstract thing, they're not just a poster on the wall. They're real practical tools that they can use. And every discussion comes from those. Every time that you're doing any of your actions, they come from those. And that's how you really live with these values. And so there's skills and culture in action. So let's look at one more example. Systems, driving motivation. So the bottom part of the puzzle, systems and motivation. So this is a really fun one, right? So one of the things that I did is I completely changed the way that we listen to the people in Pizza 4Ps. So how many of you have taken a survey at work? Yeah, I'm betting there's a lot of people not raising their hands that are lying. So, probably just about everybody has done some kind of survey at work, or at least you've done some kind of survey. And what happens with those surveys? Typically, in most companies, that survey goes to HR. What does HR do? HR creates a report. What does that report do? That report goes to the leadership. What does the leadership do? Oh, yeah, okay, sure. Maybe, if you're lucky, they create some sort of big initiative to fix a problem or two. And that's about it. And the number one reason why people don't want to take surveys is because they don't matter. And that sucks. So what we did at Pizza 4Ps is we made it matter. We took that survey data, instead of sending it to HR, we sent it all the way down to middle management. And we said, here's the results of this survey. Here's what your people in your store that you directly are involved in their lives are saying. And one of the coolest examples that came out of this, we had a store that their satisfaction or happiness rating in their store was typically in the 30s to 40s. So we did this training, and I worked with a wonderful woman called T. And T, after the training, said to her team, she said, hey, everybody, send me really good feedback that I can actually use. And that was her. Like, she did that. I didn't tell her to do that one, but that was awesome. She actually said that. And then what happened is, because she said to them, she asked for it. She created the space, the psychological safety for them to speak up. And I know in Vietnam, that's tough sometimes. You know, I come from the land in the US where people won't shut up. Here, it's tough to get people to speak up. But she created this space for her team to speak up. And what happened was, she saw from 1 month to the next, her happiness score jumped up to over 90%. And the funniest thing was, like, the things that came up that made the big difference were so small, but they made such a big impact in the lives of the people doing it. It was things like, in the break room, it's hot, we need a fan. How much does a fan cost? Right? So they bought a couple of fans. And the other one that I think was so funny, and why there's a keyboard at the top of this, was one of them was the keyboard at reception. Some of the buttons are broken, and it's been like that for 6 months or a year. And so they bought a new keyboard. And it jumped the satisfaction happiness rating by over 60% in that store. Pretty crazy. And so that's your motivation and your system. So we systemize a way to get people to have better lives at work, and thus drive the motivation. So, bringing this whole sort of puzzle together and creating that unique wow, and this is what I want to come back to. We've got the values and we've got the North Star. Everybody leaves with a smile. All right? We built into the annual reviews, usually these are performance-related things, but we built into the annual reviews to specifically evaluate on the values, on the behaviors. We created reward and recognition systems to honor these things. And they went from very small to little recognitions day to day to our annual gala. That was a big prestigious event, black tie, everyone showed up for, and celebrated mostly the values and exhibiting those. And behind that was the performance metrics. They were there too, but we focused on the values. And through this, remember the beginning of the conversation about how wow became normal? We created a way for people to create unique experiences. Not rules-based, not I'm gonna give you a chocolate cake because we screwed up, but every single situation, guided by everyone leaves with a smile, I know the way I need to behave, I can create a unique experience, and that brought the wow. All right, so speaking about all of that, I'm getting towards the end here, don't worry. I want to talk about an elephant in the room, and that is, I'm in Vietnam, and I realize that. And you guys, I can't tell you how many times I've heard this phrase, Oh, you don't understand. That won't work. This is Vietnam. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that, right? And the first thing I want to really, really point out is that culture is behavior. Okay, so that's the first major point here. Culture is just behavior. Okay? The second thing I want to point out is that culture is not fluffy. So you're hearing about it from me, the former Culture and Operations Excellence Director of Pizza 4Ps, right? And you think about Pizza 4Ps, make the world smile for peace. That's fluffy, that's happy, that's great. But that's not what culture is. What culture is how your company acts, how your company behaves. And it doesn't have to be happy fluffy. What you do need to do, though, is you do need to know your North Star. You need to know, right? Volkswagen. You need to know the vision. I call it Volkswagen because I think of VW. Anyway, VW, not Volkswagen. VW. But you need to know your North Star. And when you know your North Star, you need to give some guidance. How do we behave in order to get there? Okay? And then you need the skills. And I look at skills more as guidelines. Here's some tips on how to deliver the behaviors and the North Star, right? These are not the rules. This is not you have to do it this way. Here's some tips on how to get that done, how to make every customer leave with a smile. And then you build the systems underneath that support the entire thing, that allow ordinary people to create these extraordinary results focused on these elements, right? And it's not about feelings. It's not that happy thing. It's designing the behaviors that differentiate your business in this crowded marketplace. And culture comes in so many forms. So again, we have the vibrant happy, right? And that's, you probably could say, that's Pizza 4Ps, you know? It's a happy place. It's where people love to go and it's smiling all the time. But that's not, again, that's not the definition of culture. That's just a culture. But you also could be competition driven. Think about maybe a real estate company, for example. Hang, I'm looking at you. Right? You might be competition driven, and that's okay, right? You guys are trying to sell homes, you're trying to sell whatever you're selling, and so friendly competitions and creating that environment is your thing. Or it might be quiet and reserved. Maybe you work at an IT company, right? And you work with guys or girls that would much rather stare at their screen than ever talk to a human. Ever. So, whatever it is, it's not about that you have the first one. It's that you have clarity about it. And you know what you're trying to deliver to your people and the experience that you're trying to give. And that you define those behaviors so that you can deliver it. All right. So final thoughts on this and kind of a challenge to you guys. In this saturated market, your real edge, it's not your product, price, or process. It is your people and what you can do with them. So my challenge to you is to get clear on your North Star, if you don't already have it, to live your values. They are not a poster on the wall. They need to be embedded into everything that you do. Put them in your SOP, put them in your training. Make sure that they are lived, spoken about, eaten, slept with, and breathed in your company. And then there's another trick. You gotta trust your people. Because you're not giving them hard, fast rules. You're not saying, you do this, and you do this, and you do this. What you're saying is, this is what we want to deliver, and this is how you need to behave, so go be awesome. You got to trust your people to do that. And then you got to let them make magic. With 2 minutes left on the clock, the whole thing broke. There is a next slide, but it, wow, that's awesome. There was one last slide, just a thank you slide. So thank you everybody for having me here today. Thank you, Zoom.
Thank you so much. Yes, and I was completely inspired. You really made me wow. And thank you so much, Mr. Joe Black. Yes, and please return your seat of honor. Thưa quý vị thân mến, và trong buổi sáng ngày hôm nay thì có lẽ là chúng ta đã bắt gặp được rất là nhiều quan điểm hay và có thể là không mới với tất cả quý anh chị, nhưng chắc chắn là từ hành